Hi, people. I hope you're all well. So, I've spoken about eco groups now for basically as long as they've been tormenting the public, and I sort of look at a starting point of 2019. Actually, Extinction Rebellion formed in late 2018, but they really started coming to the public attention the following year. And yeah, for the last 4 years, they have been basically tormenting the public, causing mass disruption, generally making a nuisance for themselves. Um, these specific groups, Extinction Rebellion, Insulate Britain, Just Stop Oil, they seem to form a new group every year. I think they're all interlinked, even if there is some slight variations in their specific um, arguments or demands. But the overriding theme is about supposed environmentalism. I say supposed environmentalism for the reason that I don't really see them as environmentalists. I don't see these people as promoting green business. I don't see them promoting sustainable solutions. All I see is wanton criminality and infantile stunts hiding behind protest. And most glaringly of all, their utterly obnoxious campaign against the public. Um, and at the start of this year, the start of 2023, I really thought they'd sort of fizzled out a little bit because the early months of this year they were relatively muted, relatively quiet compared to previous years. I thought, okay, maybe they've finally kind of given up. In fact, Extinction Rebellion said they would change their tactics. Then along came to Stop Oil. We had the sporting events disruption. We had individual incidents like the disruption of George Osborne's wedding. Wherever you think of George Osborne, the hypocrite involved in that, by the way, she went on, she was exposed as going on a flight to Italy not long afterwards, or having booked a flight. Absolute hypocrisy, and I think that makes their antics all the more grating to the public. Um, but it just seems to have no end in sight. I mean, the government has tried to bring in legislation, but it's never easy to rush through legislation. And rightly, there should be always scrutiny of legislation, what exactly it involves. But I do think they face barriers from the likes of Liberty, who, say that they're a human rights group, but they're lobbying for the rights of a very arrogant minority who are actually inflicting on the rights of the majority. Um, and it's obscene. It's absolutely obscene. And one of the videos, one of the comments read, "In my country, Ecuador, your rights end when you take away the rights of others." Now, I don't know much enough about the situation in Ecuador to comment in great detail on that, but I think it does tap into something. It is, it seems that we're a soft touch, basically. How far do you allow tolerance? Do you allow it to the point where an intolerant minority who insist on causing disruption and stress. They're not peaceful. Those are not peaceful actions. Um, think that they can hold the majority hostage. Now, this thing about peaceful protesters, I think it really needs to be challenged because just just the absence of violence, the fact that they're not throwing punches or planting bombs, does not, in my opinion, make them peaceful. If you know that your actions are deliberately stressing people out, if you know that they're aggravating people, if you're seeking to be provocative, that is not peaceful. Um, and it's absolutely insufferable. And I'm not sure that there is any historic precedent for this specific. I mean, I've mentioned militant suffragettes who were very unpopular as well, and I've said that I don't think you can directly correlate those militant tactics, such as blowing up phone boxes, post boxes, to women getting full suffrage. I think other factors were involved. But let's look at, for example, the marches that Gandhi led in India because they might want to draw an analogy there. They will say, oh, that was civil disobedience. But that was against the British authorities. It was against the ruling administration of the day. It wasn't against other Indian citizens. And this is a key difference. Um, this is what marks this lot out as different from almost any other movement in history. I mean, the civil rights group, Martin Luther King knew that he had to get white America on board. He knew that after Selma, he had to branch out. And I'm not saying he was always universally popular. He certainly wasn't in the South, but I think he understood that. And after the March on Selma, there was widespread support for civil rights. The difference in this situation is the vast majority are against this law and have been consistently against it. Now, as it stands, there's about five groups online on Facebook that are against them. I actually administer two of them. One of them is a group and one of them is a page. They haven't got a great deal of traction, if I'm being honest, because the settings, the way Facebook has settings, it's if you want to join, feel free to check them out. One is anti-eco extremism, and the other is anti just stop oil. One is a group and one is a page. The basic premise is everything I'm saying in these videos. Feel free to like and share them. There's a few other groups that are a bit more tongue in cheek. There's a lot of memes and they are full of people who wouldn't necessarily agree with the narrative and maybe, would be totally skeptical of human influence on climate change. I'm not of that school of thought. But to be quite honest, whether you are pro environmentalism or not is beside the point here. The real issue is democracy, and the real issue is just how obnoxious these tactics are. Um, But I could talk all day about how I don't think you can reason with extremists. I think that they have tunnel vision. I think it's a waste of time trying to talk to them. I really do. I just don't think you can. If you try to talk to a just stop oil person, and maybe I look like a hypocrite here because I made that video pitching out to them. It was more for the record. I don't think it'll actually work. It's more just for the record. But and to be honest, I haven't checked the comments, but I would not at all be surprised if there is anyone from those groups. They will say usually their tactic is to deflect. So they'll start talking about climate change and the earth, but they'll talk about anything except their own tactics, and that's just divisive and frankly a little bit cowardly. That aspect of it is cowardly. I don't think necessarily sticking themselves out there knowing that they'll get abused is cowardly. It's, I suppose, in its own perverse way, it's brave, but not brave in a noble way. It's just reckless brave. It's just stupid because all they're achieving is infuriating people for the wrong reasons. Um, but yeah, they'll deflect it. So I don't think you can reason with them. I don't think you can talk to them. Try talking about the tactics. If someone says, I'm trying to get to the airport, they'll say, oh, but the carbon footprint of planes, you're part of the problem. So I don't think you can reason with them. Um, people have tearfully tried pleading with them, and that's what makes them so callous. And why, again, I have a problem with the term peaceful protester. A peaceful person, a decent person, does not willfully inflict suffering on others for no reason. That's what they're doing, and it's disgusting. Anyway, what I want to focus on a little bit more is the police response or lack of, point one, and point two, the escalating tensions with the public. I think both are a very serious problem. I've seen videos of the public taking matters into their own hands and people praise them. And I understand that. I fully join the chorus of I want to buy this guy a beer. The problem is, though, it's not a good situation because those people are being forced into that situation and they could face real legal consequences. Look at Sherilyn Spade, the woman from Essex who, faced reckless driving charges absurdly because she slowly moved her vehicle forward when she was trying to get her son to school. And some may go, I can't remember if it was Insulate Britain or just Stop Oil, but they were sitting in front of her vehicle and she was irate. She was trying to get her son to school, and as a result of the fine that she incurred and the driving ban, it totally affected her job because some tone deaf, useless judge didn't look at the mitigating circumstances. And I think the whole handling of this, the lenient punishments, the fact that judges aren't taking mitigating factors into board when there is situations where the public are, brought up before a court. I think it points to a legal establishment that isn't in the real world. These judges need to understand just how angry the public are, and I don't think they get it. And I don't think the police gets it. And this bit is really, really troubling because if the police those who are tasked with upholding the law and apprehending criminals cannot do their basic job. What situation are we in? We're in a situation where unfortunately vigilantism is the only approach. I don't like vigilantism, it's not something I would usually advocate, and I don't even advocate. But nor am I going to condemn anyone who takes the law into their own hands, because they literally have no choice. I mean, from a purely practical point of view, I would say they should be careful because they could end up getting done for assault. But they really have no choice. There was two incidents today. I mean, there's so many of them now online of people confronting these. I'm reluctant to even call them activists. These fill the box. Call them a lot of things. But anyway, one of them showed a guy was a rate. It was somewhere in London. I don't know precisely where, but he laid into one of them, and the person was on the ground. They kicked him. Um, now some people will say he's a violent thug and he should be arrested. But then you look at the context. The woman that he was with, I don't know if she was his partner or his sister or who knows, but she was in labour. She actually told them that she was pregnant. It's hard to make out all the details because of the honking of horns, but this horrible slow walking tactic that they use. She was clearly upset. She said she was in labour. Now, what if that woman had went into a miscarriage as a result of being delayed? That just shows how horrible and callous they really are. They just don't care. Even when people are pleading those situations. What happened is the man obviously lost his temper and attacked them. But the thing is, those who are fighting back, I don't think that they're violent people. I don't think they go out and get violent just for the sake of it. They're not the ones looking for a fight. They're literally being forced into a corner because the police are nowhere to be seen. And this is something that is really alarming. Now, when he was asked about this, Sir Mark Rowley said the problem is that we don't have the intelligence. Just Stop Oil doesn't promote where they're going to strike. So he's saying that's the problem. It's a logistical problem. But if one of the world's biggest police forces, one of the world's most technologically equipped police forces, cannot handle a bunch of eco-anarchists, and there's probably a hardcore of 100 of them, what the hell is going on? Can the police not infiltrate their communications? It just seems very dubious that they wouldn't have some sort of intelligence to establish this. Um, and then they should arrive and drag them off the road. Because this is the thing, even when they do arrive, yes, arrests are made, but not before there's a lot of negotiating, where they will actually allow these people to get into a dialogue with them. I think that's the wrong approach. I don't think the police should be getting into a dialogue with them. It shouldn't be a case of, oh, can you please move? You're inconveniencing the public. Now move or we'll arrest you. This is your final warning. No, I would say read them the rights, drag them off. 10 seconds at most to, give them time to disperse. That is it. And if they refuse to do so, if they refuse to be arrested, or they don't go peacefully, as in, they try to, flop the body and stuff, use water cannon. I honestly think it's got to the point where there needs to be a much, much more hardline approach. And it's sad that it's come to that. But I saw there's one thing that's doing the rounds. One of the activists in Germany, they have a different name there, but he glued it onto a road. So what do? They take the piece of tarmac out of the road, and the idiot's left with it on his hand. So he'll have the nice job of having to clean it off. It will leave a hole in the road. I think he should be made to pay for it. But that is probably a better approach than holding up the traffic, for hours and hours on end while they try to get the right solvent to, you know, gently take his hand out. I take the view if someone puts himself in that position, they'd face the consequences. Um, Honestly, at this point, it's infuriating. And I think the police have a lot of answering to do. I don't like criticizing the police, but there's no other way to see this other than their approach has been pathetic. And I think the rot set in from the start when I believe it was British Transport Police and one of the M25 stunts with Insulate Britain, they actually offered them cups of tea. That isn't an exaggeration, that's not some sort of invention. It actually happened. And I think that officer, whatever her name was, she isn't fit to be a police officer. Um, that's it in the rot. I think it enabled them. Now, I'm not saying had they taken a very hard line approach from the start, it would automatically stop these people because they're extremists. They're hell bent on doing it. But at least it would have sent the right message to the public. As it stands, frankly, the public are suspicious of the police. And I'm not one to get into conspiracy theories. I think we need to be a little bit careful there. I've heard some people saying that it's all planned, like the government has actually set this up somehow in order to justify more extreme laws. I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think there's any evidence of that. I think the government's responding to what they're doing. But they're facing bureaucracy and they're facing lobby groups like Liberty who claim that they're about human rights, but they lobby for the human rights of the minority who are attacking the majority. So it's not easy to get that legislation passed. And then you have groups like Greenpeace and others falsely say that they're taking away the right to protest. I think any new legislation, obviously, it has to be scrutinised very, very carefully. And there must be a right to protest. It is part of democracy. But when that protest descends into outright criminality and willfully hurting the public, that's when it has to be curtailed. There is no right to hurt the public. And some will say, oh, but all protest causes some disruption. Well, let me cite a different here. The major protests against the Iraq War 20 years ago, yes, it would have caused some traffic delays and diversions and so on. So there would have been disruption. But the big difference is those protesters were not aiming to hurt the public. Their anger was with the Blair government. The difference that stands this law out is their very, very explicit targeting of the public. They're not going outside the big energy giants. They're not going outside Shell or BP. They're targeting ordinary men and women, people who are just trying to get on with their lives, and it's utterly disgusting. So, if the police don't start really putting effort into this, improving their intelligence, and being a lot more hardline when they do arrive on the scene, unfortunately, I do think there's going to be a lot more cases of standoffs. There was another incident today, I should say. A group of Jewish guys actually formed a human chain in order to push them back. I think their idea was to sort of push them back onto the path. It's a great idea, but again, the public shouldn't be left to deal with this themselves. I'll try and post that video if I can. Um, I'm going to wrap this up, but I think the police, the lax response has definitely played a role in enabling this law. If I was to mark the police out of 10 for their handling of eco extremism, honestly, 3 or 4 at most out of 10. I think it's been pathetic for the most part. Yes, arrests have been made. To be fair, I think there probably are some regular beat officers who want to take action. They know that it infuriates the public. But Rowley needs to start showing some leadership. He needs to take a hardline approach and say, this is clear cut. The fence is there. It's a highway violation. Don't get into arguments with them, just drag them off. And also, the police would do well not to arrest anyone who's basically laying off to them. Now, I'm not saying anarchy should reign, but frankly, because of police ineptitude, because their response has been so lax, the public really have been left with no choice. If the police take 20 minutes to arrive or whatever it is, and someone is trying to get their sick relative to hospital, of course they're going to take matters into their own hands. I would. I'm not saying I would do it lightly. I don't want, an assault charge, but I absolutely would. If I could drive, I don't, but if I did, and I was trying to get a loved one to hospital, absolutely, I would physically remove them. And then there's a whole area of, well, if it's female activists and, male members of the public, again, that's a dicey area because they can easily be accused of something. So, I call on all decent people, men and women. I think in those situations, women should intervene as well. I think women should take on the women activists and men take on the male activists just to prevent you know, um, any issues there. It shouldn't be that way. I believe in equality and I think they're all worthy of contempt, but inevitably it would create situations. But I think that the public is 100% justified in physically pushing them off, not maybe punching them, but physically dragging them off. I think they should take away their banner, throw it in a hedge or something that will distract them. They need the banners, right? Take off their high visibility jackets, something that will force them to have to go away. I think people should even, the next time you see someone doing this, join in, help them out, because one person can't handle this by themselves. So if you have one person and they're trying to pull them out of the way, and there's a group of 12 of them, they're just going to go back. I've noticed too, they usually have someone in front, like sort of stewarding the event, the disruption of the event, the criminality, you know. Um, it sickens me to the core. It really does. And the irony is, I don't even drive and I don't even live in London, and they make my blood boil. But it's what I call empathetic anger. I just have so much sympathy for what people are going through. So there's several approaches going forward. Sadly, there is going to be more confrontations like this. You can only push people so far, so it's inevitable. I think that there needs to be strong mitigating factors so that members of the public are not prosecuted. I think basically the case should be thrown out if such a thing happens, unless it's a very extreme and someone dies. But it's incredible that no one has so far, really, because they're going to keep pushing people until one day someone is going to really snap and do something. They might. Who knows? I don't even want to think, but that might be inevitable, and it will be entirely their own fault because for 4 years they've been aggravating the public. Now, I'm not justifying, I'm not advocating vigilantism. I'm not going to condemn it, not in this situation. Um, I think the bank accounts should be frozen. They're getting funded by millionaires. Just as it's illegal to fund terrorism, it should be illegal to fund crime. Freeze their bank accounts. Okay, that way they don't get bailed out of jail so easily. Edward Whittingham, one of the hardcore activists, he even sabotaged his own graduation. So if the university has any backbone, I don't know which university it was. I think it's somewhere in the southwest. I think it was Exeter. Yeah, Exeter University should declare his degree null and void. I mean, how arrogant that this guy would hijack the special day of other students. They went to graduate as well, and he's hijacked that. And he's the serial offender. He's the guy that attacked that targeted the Crucible in Sheffield, the snooker competition. He's a hardcore activist. This is the thing. They have this pathological. It's almost like they get a kick out of being hated. The only thing they've achieved. I think they've really achieved getting the public to hate them. That's something. I can't think of any group in the public arena that is so despised as these eco loons are, even ISIS, and that is saying something. Anyway, freeze their bank accounts, much more police presence, and much more robust police action, and do not prosecute members of the public. I think those are the things that should happen going forward. Your thoughts?